Okay, so we're gonna be adding now the final indentations. And then for this we're gonna be using the thinner stylus. So for this one we're just gonna be making quick indentations. I can keep them random, but also make them crisscross. So make them curve to the right, to the left, overlapping the hairs below. Okay, we're gonna start on this layer now. What we could also do is also extend the ends, the tips of the last indentations that we made, just in order to make the tips finer. And if you really want some really fine hair, just don't press too hard on the paper. Just barely touch it, and this will give you finer hairs. These are nice, especially along the edge. So here we're moving pretty fast here. This is what's going to give us the frizzy look, these final hairs. Again, we're also adding like hairs that are out of place. For example, hairs that don't follow the hair flow. Instead, they curl up or down or to the side. So they are out of place. Okay, so let's go to the layer above. Once we start adding pencil, you're gonna start seeing all this planning that went into it. It'll be much more noticeable. Okay, so let's go to the final section, which is this section right here. So section here. Once we finish indenting, we're going to erase all these pencil lines. Again, we're moving pretty fast here. We already added the main hairs. These are just a bit of extra detail. And you'll notice these single hairs when we start adding pencil. And that's what I mean, make them random. It also gives the drawing much more texture. I'm a big fan of texture. I love texture. I love the way it makes the hair look. So these single hairs help with that. Okay, so we're gonna finish that layer and then we're gonna go to the final layer above. I know this seems like a lot of steps, but I can tell you that it's always worth it in the end. It may not look like it now, but once we start adding pencil, you'll start seeing the effects that all these layers have. Alright, so we're done. Next we're gonna start adding pencil. Actually no, before that we're gonna erase these pencil lines. Don't worry if it doesn't erase completely. You just want to get rid of most as much as possible. Okay, YouTubers, so we finished erasing the outlines. So now what we're going to do is going to bring out some of the indentations so it makes it easier to separate the layers. And for that I'll be using a chamois towel. And all I'm doing here is I'm lightly going over the paper, the indentations. You're not going for anything dark. It's just to lightly bring out the indentations. So once you start adding pencil, you'll know where to add. It makes it much easier to see the lines, the indentations. Now that we have that, I'm going to start adding. We're going to start with the lowest layer again. And the lowest layer is down here. So this is the outline here. So it'll be this layer down here. Just look at the reference image. The link is going to be in the description. This is based off this tutorial is based off a written tutorial that I did for my website. So you can look at the reference image on there. And for that reference image, in that reference image, you'll notice at the bottom part, this section here is full of darker hair. So it's going to be deeper. It's going to be darker because the less shadow is hitting that area, and also because it's got darker hair. So the way we're going to be doing is we're going to go first along the edges of the two layers. So we have this main first layer here, and then we have the second layer here, and then the third layer here. So we're just going to go along the edges of those two other layers that are above this first layer. Again, this is in order to bring out to separate the layers. Okay, so we have that now. And then I'll lightly go over the whole area. See, this is the part that I mean when I said that this is like magic, because this is where you start to see all the work that went into planning and making these indentations. So we have that now. So now we're gonna blend that in because these hairs are darker, right? So we gotta make sure that they're darker than the hairs above it. So again, taking the towel, you could either do this, some tissue paper, and then we'll lightly darken the hairs. Okay, this is where the fun part starts, and also where your understanding of hair comes into play, because this is where you're going to be searching for those patterns, those clumps, and the layers, because you're going to be darkening the shadows, and then after all that, in the end, we're going to bring out the highlights. But first, we got to darken the shadows, and to do that, we need to find which hairs are above and which hairs are below. Again, yours is going to be completely different than mine, so you need to like recognize which parts are going to be darker because less light is hitting that area. And I usually do this with a 6B pencil, so I just go around and I darken what I think should be darker. See down here? We're gonna start down here. So this area right here, this represents an area where no light is hitting it. So it's like deep within the lion's mane. And then you have these hairs that are above that area, that are overlapping that area. And also remember those at the beginning we separated these two layers. We had the first layer on here, and then we had another layer of hair. So these hairs, some of these hairs, I'm gonna be overlapping the hairs below here. So now we need to separate those. Again, this will come over time. It'll become much easier to you because it'll be easier for you to recognize these patterns, and you'll be able to recognize which clumps of hairs are above which, and so on. Again, when doing this, it helps to flip the drawing around because it makes it easier. Sometimes it makes it easier to see different patterns. See, these are the hairs that I mentioned that we did in the last section. These single hairs that you see here, those are the ones that we are going to be highlighting in the end. Those are going to be those loose hairs that we want to highlight. So now, again, I'm just going in and I will be bringing out the shadows. Again, I'm not pressing so hard, just slightly, and bit by bit it darkens by itself. And what I'm using here is the 6B pencil. Okay. Okay, you see, this is it's very evident here. You have this clump of hair here, this group of hairs. And then you have this section right here. These hairs are coming below from under these hairs here. So I darken this area. And you can already see how that separated these hairs from these hairs. And for this step, this is where this comes in. Comes in hand. It's very helpful. This is called a color shaper, and the tip is made out of silicone, so it makes it so much easier to blend. And because it's got a fine edge, you can really go in there and darken individual hairs. Again, here I'm just going by logic, what makes sense. And what I mean by that is I'm looking for hairs that are below other hairs, and I just darken the hairs that are below. I'm going to be darkening this area a bit more because these hairs are going to be darker. They're almost black, so I don't want them to stand out too much. Okay, so then after shading, you can go in again with this. This is a graphite stick, 6B, and I'm further separating the clumps of hairs. See? And that's why I say study what you're going to be drawing first before you actually pick up a pencil, because then it makes it so much easier for you to recognize these patterns. Because hair, it behaves differently under different conditions. And if you know these details, these things, it makes it easier to add them to your drawing. And that's what I meant when we were indenting. It wasn't just it was random, but it was calculated. Each line had its purpose. So the indentations needed to make sense, and this is where we're bringing out those details. Again, this hair is going to be darker, right? But this hair, the remaining mane, is going to be lighter. So we're not going to be darkening it as much as this. And these hairs up here, this area here, it's going to be darker because you have much more hair overlapping this section. So we're going to be darkening much more. See, and then we're going with color shaper, and we darken. So these hairs are coming from the back. They're coming from the back here, and they're coming out. So that's what we're going to be darkening these ends, because they're coming out from under all this other hair above it. Again, with this color shaper, you don't need to press that hard. With the silicone tips, it gives you so much control over the pencil. So I'm just going along the edges and I'm darkening hairs that look like are coming off from the bottom, from under here. See, I'll do it now so I can show you. But this section above has lighter hair, right? So this is going to be overlapping this hair. So then I would go in and just bring out the highlights. And I'm clumping, I'm bringing individual hairs together, but just by erasing the pencil in between some of the indentations. See, and so just by doing that, I just separated two layers. I separate this layer from this layer, and then I can go in and further refine the tips. And we'll do the same here. Just as we have hairs coming up from the bottom here, we also have hairs coming up from the bottom below this layer above. So again, we just go in and we just darken a couple of these, just to give the illusion of that there's a layer below these hairs. Again, I'm not pressing, I'm just lightly going over it and it slowly darkens. See, just think of these two pencils as hairs. So then you would have one pencil above it. So you have this hair is above this hair. So then I would just go in and just darken the hair below this. So I would darken this hair. And basically that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those patterns. Again, it needs to make sense. And again, just as we added clumps up here, we also add them down here. Again, when I say clumps, what is basically I'm taking individual hairs and I'm grouping them together by erasing the pencil in between the indentations. It just gives you the illusion of thicker hair. Again, they also need to it needs to make sense, right? So I'm not just randomly tapping. I'm searching. I'm looking for these clumps. So you see, you have one here, and then you have another one here. But like I said, this hair is darker, right? So it can't look like this. So then with a 5H pencil, you just go in and lightly go over the area. See, this will darken the whole clump together. So there you have one clump here. couple actually. So you have this clump here, and then you have another clump here, and then you have hair down here. Now this hair, we can darken it to further suggest that this hair is below these clumps, that there's more hair under it. Okay, we'll stop here, and don't forget to subscribe for the next video.